Feel the power.
Oh, I can feel it.
Our moment of triumph approaches. It's
Rock Talk.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Rock Talk.
Can you feel the power? Welcome back to Grok Talk, brought to you by GraniteGrok.com and the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We very much appreciate their allowing us to use this space, and we can't say enough nice things about them. Please go to cnht.org and see what they do. Make a donation. Help them out, because at some point you're going to need them, especially if you're in a town in the state of New Hampshire, because they help you interface with the towns and cities and just that whole thing.
Power-hungry politicians and civil servants that believe they are the public masters.
Yep, and odds are pretty good that if you have a situation and you can't afford lawyers to interface with your town, something we were talking about in the last segment, they have resources and they have experience with similar cases just like yours, and they will be happy to help you out.
Yeah, most of them, upon seeing Ed stroll through the door, fall over backwards in paralysis.
Yep. Oh.
And then there's voter fraud. And Miss Eleni Blue is complaining that we are inappropriately accusing Jared Cram of being a fraud.
Oh, let them continue to do that, please. Please, Miss Eleni Blue, whoever you are, I would like you to repeat and follow that story for weeks if you have to, because we know more things you don't. So,
the hammer is being raised.
That's right. And by all means, walk underneath it. I have no problem with that. So anyway, Jonathan Last will be with us in the next segment to talk about a book he edited called The 7 Deadly Virtues, 18 conservative writers on why the virtuous life is funny as hell. But for now, in this segment, we have, as I have been advertising, coming on the program to give us a post-election requiem, Pete Ingemi, the tech guy. Pete, welcome to the show.
Great to be back on Grok Talk again.
Good to have you here. So how you doing?
Good morning, Pete.
I'm doing all right. My youngest is a little under the weather, but it's the conservatives ascended, so life is good, except for here in Massachusetts, of course. But then again, it's Massachusetts.
Did you not get a governor?
We did get a governor, and a governor that is better than Martha Coakley.
Yeah, that's you can't say that. You can't say that.
And you have to take those little things as they come, and getting the better of the choices that we had is certainly good. And Charlie Baker is a very competent and actually, on a personal level, a rather nice fellow. And I suspect that while he will do very little, if anything, to cut big government, he will certainly make it more efficient, which is a good thing and a bad thing, in that it's a good thing because our tax dollars should be used more efficiently, and it's a bad thing because once those tax dollars are freed, the legislature, which can override anything he wants to do, will use those free dollars to do other very interesting things that should not be done.
I mean, and I think you pointed out right, and I do want to say this, most politicians, whether they're on the left or the right, personally can be very nice people. There's no doubt about it. There are those that are not. I think I can think of two right off the bat. Barney Frank can not be a nice person, which seems to be a lot of the time.
Except a nice person.
Except when he wishes to be charming, and then he's charming as all get out. And then we have Carol Shea Porter, who I just think she's a smarmy school teacher type, as far as I'm concerned. I've never seen her.
Don't have a lot of time for McCluster either on that front.
You're going to be surprised by this, but I have to say this about Barney Frank. During his retirement press conference, he gave me a question, and there were a lot of people who supported him who could have taken those, who he could have given a question to on a national stage rather than a smaller conservative blogger. So I got to give him props on that. And
That's fine.
Whenever I've wanted a comment from him, he's given it.
Well, and you're able to get a lot of comments from a whole lot of people. I guess it's just that fedora and scarf that just charms the pickets off of people.
It does it. It does it. Along with the big gray beard when it's on there. I mean, who can resist it?
So anyways, What's your take on what happened last week?
Well, I want to thank, and I wrote about this the day after the election. A lot of people are talking about President Obama as the cause of this election and the great Republican wave, but while he deserves a lot of the credit, I think Harry Reid's part in this should not be understated. And it's the difference between being a guy who's trying to look out for his majority and not. And think about this for a second. We just saw the Keystone Pipeline thing start to move. And we don't know if the president's going to sign it. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he vetoes it. But the point is this. Harry Reid, if this was a Lyndon Johnson, think of what he could have done for his people who needed to separate themselves from Barack Obama. He could have said, all right, we're going to take this bipartisan House bill, we're going to put it in committee. He could have stacked the committee so that it wouldn't pass, but suddenly you could have had a Mary Landrieu stand up and demand, this needs to be passed, and make impassioned speeches and vote and lose.
Well,
he could have let bills go in committee. He could have spent a year making sound bites of vulnerable Democrats fighting the administration. In fact, he could have even let some of those bills pass. And then when they go to conference committees, stack the conference committees. Or even have some of his own safe Democrats filibuster it and say, you know what, we just cannot, we're not going to let this go by. But instead of protecting his members, he did all he could to make sure the President of the United States did not have to appear to make a decision.
Correct.
And this is a president who isn't even running for re-election ever again. The political cost to the White House was practically nil. But Harry Reid was more worried about protecting the rear end of the president, just reputation-wise, mind you, and his approval numbers, than he was in re-electing his own people. If he had acted like a smart operator, he could have made a huge difference in a lot of these races, and maybe in North Carolina it would have made a difference. I don't think it would have made a difference in Arkansas, frankly, but it could have been the difference between the Republicans having 55 seats and the Republicans having 51 or 52.
Yeah, I agree that the shielding of, and basically what you've seen from Harry Reid all these years protecting the Democrats is kind of what the Republicans did during this last campaign season. In other words, don't do anything that could become controversial. Now, for the Democrats, everything was already laid out on the table. Plus, you had Obama basically campaigning against Harry Reid when he said, make no mistake, all of my policies are on the ballot box. It's like, well, let's blow Harry Reid's strategy up into space.
And he was saying that at the same time as individual Democrats were saying that they weren't joined at the hip to Obama. And he's saying all these policies are on the ballot and these people are my supporters.
Yeah, but at the same time, Pete, I want to get your take on this. All of the Republicans were basically anti-Obama and pretty much not saying much of what they would do. We certainly knew who they were against or what they were against. And Harry Reid's name came up as often. But now as a conservative activist, I'm looking, okay, what is it that the Republicans are going to do? Because I've come up with that phrase, winning is merely a precursor. It's what comes afterwards that's most important. And I don't know what they're going to do. Just look at this mess with the executive amnesty and Obamacare. If Obama keeps going off like he is right now, what he's threatened to be, which is basically a dictator in his own mind with his pen and his phone and his pen and doing pretty much whatever he wants. What are the Republicans going to do to stop them? They've already said we're not going to defund it, we're not going to stop the government under defunding, and we're not going to use impeachment. There's nothing else that they can do, especially if they do this long-term continuing resolution funding. So are we hearing nothing more than, well, we'll repeal Obama 60 times because we know that Harry Reid's going to just hold it and never get anything. So it's all words, all show, all glitz, no cattle.
Well, I actually tweeted about this a little bit earlier this morning before Mass, in that I think there's no point in talking about impeachment because the mathematics aren't there in the Senate. And all talk about impeachment does is to it's a fundraiser for Democrats who don't know how to count, and a fundraiser to use against Republicans who are so angry they don't care to count. But I think there are things that can be done. In fact, I've got a post coming up on that subject, although Ted Cruz gave a hint saying, you know what, if the president decides to use executive amnesty, maybe we Republicans will start using amnesty too when elected. I mean, imagine an amnesty for all people with gun offenses that from laws that are the Second Amendment laws in New York, for example. Imagine the president giving a blanket amnesty to all New Yorkers or all Coloradans or all people in Connecticut who violate the gun laws. Imagine a president giving blanket amnesty for people who violate environmental laws.
He won't care.
The EPA regulations, or a blanket amnesty for businesses who choose not to enforce Obamacare. These are all things that we should be talking about. If we want to decide, okay, if this president wants to decide that these laws don't apply, let's return the favor, and we should be talking about this very, very loudly. Ted Cruz has already thrown some hints along those lines, but that's the first thing we can do. The second thing is funding. We can always, regardless of what the president says, we can always pass bills funding, okay, we're going to fund this, we're going to fund this, and pass the piecemeal funding bills. Harry Reid might have held them all up in the Senate, but once the president has in front of him, okay, here's the funding of the U.S. military. Do you want it or not? Here's the funding for the White House. Pass those individual funding bills. And the president can either reject them or say, I want a comprehensive. Well, every time you decide you want a comprehensive, one of your constituencies is suffering. If you pass, all right, here's the funding for EBT. Do you want that funding or not? Who's going to be putting the pressure on him? Because the one thing people are forgetting right now is President Obama has no incentive to please us. Absolutely none, because he doesn't need our votes, and he knows that whatever he's going to do, he's actually in the same position that Scott Brown and Walt Haverston were in before the election, only Obama recognizes it. Nothing President Obama is going to do is going to please us, so he's going to play to his far-left base because that's where he's going to get fundraising and support. And that's the mistake, actually, that Scott Brown and Walt Haverstein made before the election. You can be as pro-choice as you want as a Republican, and you're not going to get those Democrat votes who are voting on pro-choice, but you're certainly going to keep the pro-life people home. You can be as loose on Second Amendment as you want to try and convince Democrats, hey, you should vote for me. But those Second Amendment people, they're going to stay home, and those people who are pro-abortion and pro-gun control, they have a perfectly good Democrat to vote for, and they're going to, and they did in New Hampshire.
We did. Absolutely.
So, Pete, kind of related to what you just said, Republicans could do piecemeal legislation, but there's apparently an omnibus bill making its way somewhere in the back halls of Congress that is likely to come forward and pretty much neuter that power completely for the next year at least. And then the other thing is,
can they not repeal the omnibus bill?
Over in the Senate, we have to confront the possibility that Republicans will return to rules of order instead of using the rules Reid set up to their advantage.
Well, either way is workable. I mean, if the for one thing, we have to stop worrying about what Republicans are going to do during the lame duck session, because we do not have the power in the Senate at this time. All we can do is say how you Democrats are going to be treated will depend on how you treat us during this lame duck section. This is your last chance to decide to play nice.
Not quite, Pete. You know why? Because the money for the government runs out December 13th, before the end of the lame duck.
It gets passed after that.
If they pass a year-long omnibus bill to keep the government going, because the Republicans are so scared and have no political cojones left, again, they didn't run on anything or for anything. There goes the defunding and the piecemeal stuff. So they've taken that away, like Steve talked about, that omnibus. And Harry Reid can still kill those individual little bills.
Yes, but he can take them away for a period of X amount of months. the GOP is going to have control. The thing that we have to do, in my opinion, the thing we have to do as conservatives and Republicans is worry about what we're going to have once we have control. It's the same argument that was being made against amnesty. There's no pressing need to grant amnesty to all of these people, whether it's this month. There is no pressing need for next month or the month after that or the month after that. All these things we're dealing with, we're going to have to deal with over the next 2 years, over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years. Our job is, as conservatives, our job is to get everything we can done while teaching. And this is something I think we forget as conservatives on occasion.
Pete, we're going to take a quick break. Stay there. We'll be right back. We're talking to Pete Ingemi, the tech guy. Say it right, Steve. And this is Grok Talk. We'll be right back.
New Hampshire is famous for scenic drives, but they're tough to enjoy when you're on your way to the doctor. Because Obamacare limits your choices, some will have to drive more than an hour to see a doctor. What's health insurance worth if care isn't there when you need it? Jean Shaheen voted for Obamacare, putting your doctors and hospitals further out of reach. Tell Senator Shaheen Obamacare is not working for New Hampshire.
Rock Talk.
Welcome back to Grok Talk. We are on the phone with the tech guy, Pete Ingemi, talking about some national politics, what to do, what not to do.
I just look at it as, if he's going to be so lawless right now, I'm not sure that there's anything short of impeachment that can stop Obama anyways, because if they defund certain programs, what's to stop Obama from just saying, screw it, move the money to this account and I'm going to spend it anyways for any old reason that I want?
Right.
So what do you say to that, Pete?
Well, hang on. I wanted to add a little extra on top of that. So I've seen news articles suggesting that the Republicans should add riders to bills prohibiting the movement of money between accounts. But I think that the kicker should be they start impeaching and jailing the bureaucrats at the heads of the agencies that misspend the money to put the fear of God into them, and then they won't do what Obama asks them. Go ahead, Pete.
Well, the problem with impeachment is not the grounds. I mean, for example, the grounds for impeachment for Bill Clinton were very, very clear and very, very valid, but the votes were not there. And until you have the votes, until you have the public behind you and the votes, all that does is play into stereotypes. It's a good fundraiser for certain people, especially for the left, who is foolish enough to still think this is going to happen. But I think the whole talk about impeaching Obama is a waste of time, because there's no point in talking about something you can't do. Talking about impeaching Obama is like Obama talking about the red line in Syria.
Well, Mike said impeach bureaucrats. Could you impeach bureaucrats? Are there department heads?
Lower people, sure. You could impeach lower level people. That's something different. You can make the case against lower level people. That I wouldn't have a problem with, as long as if there's grounds, impeach away. But the talk of impeaching the president, all that does is strengthen the other side. And that, again, this is the thing that we have to remember. It's like any other negotiation, any other deal making you have. We need people like us, who are strong conservatives, to make the strong conservative case every single day. The strongest of all possible conservative cases. Well, and we have to keep making that case. And
can't stop.
While that goes on, we have to have our legislatures do whatever is possible. And because the stronger case we make, the more people we educate, the more we're going to be able to move this large government in the direction we want, because it's not going to move quickly.
Let me ask you this, and I agree with you. If you're going to kill the king, as the political phrase goes. But, I keep wondering, as a conservative, I hear what Ted Cruz is saying. Well, what if the Republican president starts issuing, blanket amnesty for this, that, and the other thing? And I'm thinking, great, does two wrongs make a right? Just because Obama does it, will it make it right for the Republican as payback to do that? But I keep looking at it as, if they do, is it going to destroy our republic? Is it going to really put us in a post-constitutional world where nothing matters anymore, and we've devolved in the space of 8-year term of Obama plus a couple with a Republican, going that route, that they have just destroyed the Constitution. At what point do we go back? Or should we be hoping that Democrats in the Congress should be rising above, and Republicans rising above the politics and say, the state of our nation is at risk because we're no longer acting according to the Constitution? Or am I just being pie-eyed and stupid at this point?
Well, I think what the problem, again, that we're having is you're conflating the idea of bringing up a possibility with actual action. If Senator Cruz brings up the possibility of a Republican doing X, Y, or Z, that's very different from it actually happening when a Republican is in charge. The idea is to put the thought into the other side's
perception.
head. I mean, you have to play it's like playing any kind of those old Avalon Hill war games or something. You have to. No threat is viable unless you have to have it out there. You want to put it in their mind. Just like for example, this Obama-China deal. Right now, today, we need to be saying that this is the Obama-China deal. Right now, we need to be saying that this is going to be the Obama EPA regulations. Kelly Ayotte needs to be out on the stump saying, if I'm elected, I will oppose the Obama EPA regulations. I will oppose the Obama-China deal, so that when it comes time to the election, time to make an actual decision, her Democratic opponent will have to be standing with Obama. It's all battlefield prep in terms of getting what you want.
But this is the point that I'm trying to make, Pete. We kind of still assume that as far as politics is concerned, Obama still is a regular American president. And we were talking about earlier, he's not. He could care less what we say about him.
I know.
He doesn't care what Congress does.
I think the point is that since we can't touch Obama, we need to punish Democrats like we did in 2014. We need to punish them. We need to make them pay. We need to make them stand up for Obama and everything he does, or else.
But in the next 2 years, he is ready to go to the 100, 200 mile an hour
and
race.
the only thing stopping him is Democrats.
No, there's nothing the Democrats can do to stop him now.
Yes, they can. Yes, they can. If you make Democrats pay, Democrats will flip on that bastard for a long-term solution.
You're forgetting about, and I want to expand on what you're saying here, because this is incredibly important. Barack Obama's power ends. It has a finite amount of time left, and that clock is ticking. And every single Democrat who wants power after him either wants to be president, or wants to be a member of Congress, or wants to be a senator, or even wants to be a state legislator, understands that they are going to have to separate themselves from President Obama if they want to hold a majority, unless you're in the weirdest places like Massachusetts here.
Right, which is why you see people like Joe Manchin saying they're not going to put up with this bullshit anymore, meaning he might even flip parties.
The idea is we let Obama act the way however he wants. I mean, constitutionally, he has the power to pardon. Constitutionally, he has the power to do a lot of certain things. Do not worry about the things that Obama decides to do, no matter how outrageous, because his power is ending. And everybody who is an actual power broker in Washington knows that his power is ending. And so we just need to, if he wants to, the farther left, the farther crazy he goes, the farther he's going to hurt Democrats. So we need to just highlight it. We need to make sure every single person hears it. It's like this Gruber business. One of the speeches Gruber gave was talking about how Kerry changed the conversation. Oh, we're not taxing your health care. We're taxing these evil insurance companies. And then Gruber mentions, but of course, that's going to be passed on to the consumers. That's the type of thing we need to get out there. It's all a question of making them own it.
Yeah, the problem, Pete, is he can do so much damage. I mean, effectively, he's erasing the borders of our sovereignty, and he's going to do more and more and more. The question is, two questions primarily are, can he do so much that we can't recover because he won't care whether the Democrats all revolt in Congress, senators and reps all revolt against him? He won't care. And two, do you think that the Republicans actually have the political cojones, which I doubt, to actually come in afterwards and repair it all? Because after what I've seen in this election, all they care about the win. They don't care what happens afterwards,
yeah,
regardless
but
of what they say.
he's probably going to do it anyway.
The point, here's what I
The
say.
only thing then is impeachment, and then if you take that tool off, what are you going to do?
No, let him destroy the Democratic Party.
He'll destroy the country along with it.
Listen. 5 years of World War II did not destroy this country.
Civil War.
Vietnam War didn't destroy this country. Robert E. Lee with an army in Pennsylvania didn't destroy this country. Do you think this idiot loser who's in the White House right now, who doesn't know how to tie his own shoes without Valerie Jarrett telling him what to do, is going to be able to do it? He's a cheap Chicago thug legislature. That's all he's ever been, and that's all he's ever going to be. He's not going to bring down this country. Do not give him more power than he has. He doesn't have that ability. He can make a lot of trouble, and actually it's that the fact that he's going to make a lot of trouble, we foolishly, collectively as a country, chose to reelect him. We have it coming.
Yeah,
but we're going to be. But when he's not going to be there, what we have to do is make his actions something so bad, something so repellent to the overwhelming majority of Americans that, like General Sherman said about the Civil War, that generations will pass before they turn to it. He said we were going to make the war so terrible that generations will pass before the South turns to it again. We need to make what Obama does, and he does it very well himself, so repellent to the average American voter, to the average American taxpayer, to the person who has to go and work for a living, that generations will pass before they turn back to his party and do these things.
Right. Tom has a quick question. We're running out of time, Pete. I want to get Tom's question in for you.
We can't let him go unchallenged, obviously. We have to keep fighting back and highlighting, like you said. But he is kind of the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, look at the repellent that just happened. You know, the Republicans are taking over not because that they're competent, but because Obama is so incompetent and vile. And in the concept of Sun Tzu, when you engage your enemy and he retreats, you follow him. And
look at the Republicans we have.
Finish him off.
Yeah, and we have Ted Cruz's, and we have Joni Ernst.
I was going to say Joni Ernst is not a uncourageous woman.
No, I love the thought of her taking her castration knife to Washington and making the porkers squeal.
You have to look at this long term. I mean, look at Massachusetts.
We don't have long term because the segment's coming to an end. But I think we will look to it long term, Pete, and we want to thank you for coming on the program today because we got to go.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you
sir.
very much, Pete.
Alrighty, that was Pete Ingemi, the tech guy. I'm Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers, and Tom Flaherty. We'll be right back with Jonathan Last from the Weekly Standard.
Man.
Senator Jeanne Shaheen said, if you like your current health plan, you can keep it. That's not true, Senator. 22,000 New Hampshire citizens have been kicked off their insurance plans. Hospitals in Rochester, Concord, and Portsmouth, they aren't allowed to provide care under the exchange. Senator, you were wrong in your comments. You should apologize for your misleading remarks. I'm calling Senator Shaheen at 750-3004 and telling her I want my doctor back. You should too.
Paid for by saberpac.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidate committee.
We are struggling. Rising healthcare costs are part of the problem. Senator Jeanne Shaheen helped create this mess we're in. As a state senator, her bill chased 21 insurers out of our state. It reduced our choices, raised prices for New Hampshire families, and when Jeanne Shaheen supported Obamacare, it limited access to 10 of our 26 hospitals, reducing our choices again. Tell Jeanne Shaheen she's made healthcare worse. Few things are as important as finding the right doctor. And under Obamacare, that's harder than ever. Over a third of our hospitals no longer available. Our doctors no longer covered. Fewer choices, longer drives. No state has been harder hit than us. And even after watching it impact New Hampshire, Congresswoman Ann Custer still supports it. Call Ann Custer. Tell her Obamacare isn't working for New Hampshire.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.